It's Sports Zone right here, Lagos Talks 91.3 FM. Everybody's just speechless in the studio.
That's all, Kyle. They don't say anymore.
Okay.
Thank you. All here.
Okay, go ahead. So I shouldn't introduce anybody, so go
You
ahead.
want to go on? Just call our names. 111. We're here. Let's go.
Femi Faraway.
I'm here.
Sir Charles. You didn't say present, Charles.
And a member.
There you go.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Absolute pleasure to be here, as usual.
All right. Obina.
Today is the day.
I'm not talking today, so.
Today is the day, that's all.
Today is the day.
Yeah.
All right.
So today's... What's the day?
Okay. Yesterday, Baba Beji, was it Kelvin?
Yeah.
Accused us of not announcing who we were supposed to be talking with yesterday. We didn't because we didn't get through. Hopefully, we'll do so today. Hopefully, yes. We're doing everything that we can to ensure that it does happen. Yeah. We try our best on the zone to help all of us have an understanding of what's going on as far as sports is concerned in this country. And that includes talking to the experts themselves, talking with the technocrats themselves. We couldn't do this yesterday, but this morning we will. So joining us from Abuja is a journalist of repute. He used to work with the Nation magazine in New York. Was also an executive commissioner at the Nigeria Communications Commission. Was an editor/writer with the European Fourth Estate magazine. General editor, News and Tempo magazines. I'm sure you all remember those magazines back in the days. He also does have a BSc in International Studies from the Ahmadu Bello University. He also does have a master's degree in law and diplomacy from the University of Jos. He also did attend the Harvard University to study media and public policy. And at some point in his career, between 2001 and 2009, was the chief Hausa Service African Division of the Voice of America in Washington between those years of 2001 and 2009. Today, he serves as the sport minister here in our dear nation, Nigeria. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, please welcome the sport minister, Honorable Chief Sunday Dare, to Sports Zone. We've tried it's been like a year plus, really, to get him to come and talk to us on Sports Zone. Today, we can say that we are successful, and he's here today with us. So, good morning, Honorable Sports Minister. Good to have you on Sports Zone today. You've been waiting for this day for a very long time.
Thank you, Sports Zone, for having me, and apologies up front for the fact that it took this long. It was just, the timings and my trips. But I'm glad that we can do this today, and what a perfect time to have this conversation.
All right, so in the studio, I'm not alone. Segun Agbede is also here as well. Femi Faraway is also in the building. Guys?
Good morning.
Good morning.
You have a full squad.
Yeah, full squad. Honorable. Yeah, good morning, Honorable.
All right, Minister, let's start like this. A recent publication did say that, quoted you as saying that you've done everything that you can as a sport minister for Nigeria. And I'm sure quite a number of people want to know why you made a statement like that.
Absolutely. That statement was made from the standpoint of the time I've served as Minister of Youth and Sports, bearing in mind that out of the 4 years, COVID-19 shaved off 1 full year. I had 3 months to prepare my plans. Just about the time we're about to take off, the entire world got shut down. and you agree with me that one of the most impacted, apart from aviation industry, one of the most impacted sector was sports, because sports was about contact. And that for us, that 1 year for me was major. But eventually, when you look at it and you do an audit, I've only had 3 years, and there's just a limit to what can be achieved in 3 years. So I said that from the standpoint to say, with the time limitation, with the funding limitation, with the fact that most of the private sector people had lined up to support sports development were had their businesses hit by the COVID-19, and they basically backed down from providing the support from the private sector that will have led us to full completion and realization of our goals and plans. So I said, given the limited time of 3 years, given the challenges of funding and a couple of other challenges that came along with it, we have tried within these constraints to meet the challenges, to set clear markers, to provide support for infrastructure, support for athletes' welfare. And this is what we've been able to do. We have set up sustainable models, and with the hope that whoever comes along will find some things on the table to plug into and continue their trajectory.
Okay, that said, let's get straight into the nitty-gritty of it. There's so many questions that we need to ask. I'm sure that quite a number of our listeners also want to know about the National Stadium in Lagos and in Abuja. We saw the Super Eagles play a game in Abuja, and at the end of it, quite a number of people were displeased with the situation with the turf. And then if you can kindly explain to us as well the situation with the National Stadium, when are we going to have that project delivered?
Okay, let me start from Abuja, the Mashood Abiola National Stadium. That was the first national stadium that we tried to renovate. And when I came on, I noticed that for almost 10 years plus, the main bowl, especially where you have the pitch, the scoreboard, and all of that, had suffered neglect. And we realized that with the funding from the federal government, it was just impossible to bring it back. So we came up with a pitch policy where we were able to get a private sector person, Dangote, to help fund some repairs. We had priority areas, about 17 or more, but we gave the main priority. And he gave a ceiling of 450 million as to what he can do. So we had to pick what was most important. We picked the pitch and we picked the digital scoreboard, 2 scoreboards. Of course, when work started, a pitch like that left for 10 years unattended had virtually become a farm, have pictures of corn, weeds, and other things growing on the Mashood Abiola National Stadium. So we went at it, and we, beyond the green grass that people notice, there's an underbelly technology, the sprinkler system, the water system that supports it, the nursery creation. So much. And we went through all of that to set up, to bring back the stadium. Recall that even after we did that stadium, we had a couple of experts come to look at it. In fact, Infantino was in the country, and I took him there to see it. But over time, we had to open up the stadium to all of the national teams. It is a natural grass stadium. There are times that the limit of matches that can be played there, the spacing of those matches, the time for watering and regrowth. But because it just became a viable stadium, CAF gave us a list of 16 things to fix. The new dressing room, the reserve bench. We repaired all of that. We fixed 23 different sections of the Mashood Abiola Stadium. Beyond the green grass pitch and the scoreboard that people see, we fixed the sauna, a new dressing room, a customized reserve bench. We did so many things, fixed all the generators. Now, I can tell you that as at last month, that pitch had hosted 14 different international matches, both FIFA and CAF. That same match hosted the match we played last year on March 29 with Ghana. There was no complaint about the pitch. But what happened this time is perhaps they had about 3-4 matches played every day prior to that game, which ought not to have been so, because we have experts managing the place. They ought to have preserved that pitch for the period of the game. And we have to do a review to say, how come this pitch was good enough for previous matches and was not good for this match? So we have had an internal process to review that. We also have Premier League people. Everybody just wants to play on that single pitch. Some come to train on it. So we have to reorder the entire region. That pitch as it is still extremely good. CAF came just last month. Before that game, they picked Uyo and Abuja and said the Abuja pitch was the best pitch. There's a report on that. So we have the management of the usage of the stadium became a problem, and we have dealt with that. Now, let me talk about Surulere National Stadium. When we came on, we decided infrastructure, grassroots sports development and talent hunt, and athletes' welfare would be our focus. We decided on to also say leveraging private business funding would be critical, and we must turn sports into business. So we started working on the policy. We said Abuja and Lagos were just sporting icons, and we will face them. The Lagos National Stadium is 51 years old. The Lagos National Stadium was left unattended to for 19 years. I made several visits to that stadium with experts, and I was shocked by the extent of decay and rust and theft. And I noticed that 9 ministers before me really did not just touch it because the funding was not there. There was so much work to do. But I said, listen, we're going to give this a shot. Let's see what we can do to it. And we also made a pitch to a private sector person. We had 17 priority areas. He chose 3 of them, the tartan track, the pitch, and the single scoreboard. And we got that started. These companies were the ones that did the procurement. They chose the contractor. They released money as per performance. We just monitor what is happening. Now, a 19-year-old stadium that has been overlooked by several administrations. Nobody did anything about it. We decided to take that bold step to travel the road less traveled to get it done. And that's the effort we have made. 450 million cannot fix that edifice. The 450 million was calculated and budgeted for 3 key areas. And anybody can do the computation to fix a pitch that is abandoned for 20 years, to bring brand new scoreboard, then to do a brand new 8 or 9 lane pattern track from the scratch. The cost is out there. So the notion that 450 million was not used to fix the entire stadium and the stadium was rot. The stadium did not start to rot in 3 years. The stadium was left to rot for 19 years. We're trying to correct the problem of 19 years, and we can't correct that problem in 2-3 years. Now, shortly after that, I did announce that we have estimates, and one of the estimates was in the region of 21 billion, an equivalent of $41 million to fix that stadium. And people felt, oh, that was out of the world. But when we did the benchmark, we do the benchmark for several other stadiums. That's a 45,000 stadium there. 15,000 capacity stadium are being renovated for 25 million. The data is out there. And we'll put the data out there. We'll find out by comparison what the estimate that was given us was even the lowest. It's an estimate. The money has not been requested. It's not in our budget. We're looking at private sector coming to do that. And the concession process is almost concluded in that direction. But nature also taught us a lesson. 2 weeks after I said, this place is rotten and needs money, we had a thunderstorm in Lagos that knocked down the pole. But people also left the substance and wait for the fact that the pole fell. Yes, the pole will fall when it's 51 years old, not maintained for 19 years. The effects of and elements of weather will come on it. But all I can say is that the 3 areas to be repaired are 90% ready. 90%. The captain track, the digital scoreboard is 100% in place. The pitch itself is almost 100% in place. We're just watering it. And we will deliver those 3 components that we promised. What we hope to deliver is also the full concession of the stadium to the private sector to fund and repair it within 2 to 3 years. Now, the delivery of that concession is contingent on when the necessary authorities, the ICRC and the PPE, complete the process with the concessionaire, and we're able to take that final memo to council. But I can tell you it's an advanced stage. Thank you very much.
Honorable Sports Minister, I've had the pleasure of meeting you a couple of years ago when you came on the Sports Parliament with Segun Odegbami. And I remember then he spoke very well. And that's when so Charles was wrong when he said it's about a year. We've been pursuing you for about 2 years, but it's all good. Better late than never. There's something I'd like to ask you, which has been a particular bugbear of mine, and I think a lot of our listeners out there. The story behind the Tigresses not going for the World Cup. For me, I don't think it was ever really adequately explained. So since we have you live and direct now, I know you the let's say the wahala that with the NBA and all that preceded your tenure in office, but the Tigress was right smack bang on your table. So could you tell us Nigerians now, why did the team that fought so hard to qualify for a World Championship, why were they stepped down and not able to go?
Can you hear me?
Yes, can I hear you loud and clear?
Okay, I missed the later part of your question. I had the part about the story behind non-qualification for the World Cup, but I didn't get the later part of your question.
Sorry. This way. Yeah. Okay, let me rerun that. I'll take it from the top. Had the pleasure of meeting you on Sports Parliament with Shegun Degbami, blah 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 blah, and that's when we proceed to come on the Sports Zone. But I know the issues and challenges of the NBA preceded your tenure in MBBF. Sorry, I said NBA. MBBF preceded you. But the one that I feel that you will, I'm sure, like you take full responsibility for, is your decision for the Tigresses, the national female basketball team, not to go for the World Cup. It's been something that's been a particular bugbear of mine and several listeners. So I'd just like you to explain to us why that decision, why you decided to take that decision. What was the thinking that went into it?
Thank you very much. I will try to just take a stab at that question. True, I inherited the MBBF crisis that's been on for 7 or 8 years between the past leadership and the current leadership. And we tried to engage and manage it. But normally when it comes to an election year is always the time when the daggers are out. And I recall that we had several meetings with the two groups, at least the two major groups, the KIDA group and the Tijani-led group. We had about 2 or 3 online meetings, virtual. We had 1 or 2 physical meetings. One of the meetings, I actually left them, almost practically locking them up in my conference room at the stadium. To say, basketball needs you. If the interests of the players are your interests, gentlemen, all of you will sit down here in the next 2 hours. You decide the way forward, and then we can move. The major issue was the fact that there were areas of the Constitution that were not agreeable to other members, and they wanted those areas changed before an election can hold. But there are internal processes. When a constitution is put together, the NOC receives that constitution. The NOC sends it to the international body. They work together, and then a confirmation comes back to say this constitution is approved. And we're able to see confirmations to say this constitution as prepared went to the NOC and went to FIBA, and FIBA said it was approved. Now we engaged FIBA through letters, meetings, and the rest. Very tedious process. And FIBA was fastidious to say, listen, you can only hold this election based on this only recognized constitution. After the election, you can now have the Congress. And they told us point blank, the Congress is supreme. You'll recall that in order to save time, to help resolve the crisis, I called off, I shut down the Benin Congress at the 11th hour. That had its own consequences. But we took the hit, but we just wanted, because we're committed to that, we called it off, we pulled it off, we created a problem. And then we said, let's try again. And we set up a national reconciliation committee with top people from both groups. They met for 2 weeks and gave a recommendation. go ahead with the elections as contained in the Constitution, as directed by FIBA. And thereafter, the Congress can now do the amendments that are necessary, can reconcile the party and all of that, which we did ultimately. Of course, we got FIBA writing us, giving us clear threat that on this date, January 20th, if you do not hold the election, Nigeria will be banned and there will be serious consequences. Now, while that was going on in the background, we had people out of office stirring up a lot of trouble, using the players against the government, defaming the characters of individuals, talking about funds that were not even missing, to the extent that our players were recording videos and attacking the government, embarrassing the government, notwithstanding that we were making serious efforts. It got to a point that there was a clear threat that they will not represent Nigeria unless every of their dime is paid, unless the KIDA board is sacked. It was out there in the open. So we have the boys signing a paper that they will not play for Nigeria. We have the girls threatening they will not play unless their money was paid. We saw that all our entities, our attempts at resolution were snubbed at. Rather, people resorted to blackmail, defamation, attack. How can a country proceed? How can I proceed and say I want to present the Nigerian team for a competition when I am sure that they will show up? Well, I've been served notice that they will protest on the court and will not play, while our entities off the radar and on radar to get them to understand what we're doing and to work with us did not work. And there was a limit to that time. And we presented all of this to Mr. President to say these are the steps we have taken. There must be a resolution. We saw through it all that the interest of the parties and individuals was more important than the interest of the athletes. But the athletes also got caught up in the politics, which should not be at all. So rather than dealing and staying with the ministry and the federal government, they play under the anthem of the federal government of Nigeria. The anthem is saying they represent this country. We even told the leaders, your legitimacy is drawn from the federal government. There's no language, nothing within tell all these leaders. There was no reconciliation. Everybody was punching all kinds of stories. So we have to take a critical look at it. Are we going to risk? First, we didn't have the fund to clear those debts. We had approvals. There's usually between approval and cash backing, there's a gap. The approvals that we received from the president 4 years ago, some received under Jonathan. They are with the Ministry of Finance. They've not been funded. Now, until we get the cash to fund that, there's nothing anybody can do. And we laid this on the table. But they said, so we presented the facts and said, we're at the point in which if we present this team and we go ahead with it, this country risk being embarrassed, we risk being scandalized, because these players will not play. These players are out there doing videos, writing papers, granting interviews, attacking the very institution of sports that is meant to administer. We opened forums for dialogue. They did not exhaust that process. So, and we presented it to say, we also suffered 3 or 4 years of a court case where the domestic youth basketball development was completely dead in our country. So we took a holistic look to say, do we want to proceed on this trajectory, or do you want to just simply anchor down and let's deal with these issues fundamentally from the source, clear the debts, bring back our youth basketball development, and then move ahead. And we did the proposals. That ultimate decision to withdraw Nigeria for 2 years. Of course, unfortunately, the World Cup thing could not be separated. They said, look, we will not allow you to go to the World Cup since you've withdrawn from international competitions. It was taken by Mr. President. I have a clear approval for that. So while it's unfortunate, there were so many things that were happening that negated the effort at reconciliation. People were out for vendetta. People saw the government as an enemy. You must work with institutions. You can't represent a country and attack the same country and refuse to have solutions to, refuse to agree to solutions.
But Mr. Minister, I hear what you say. I do, and I appreciate the expressed sentiment. But wasn't that akin to throwing out the baby with the bathwater? The whole essence of your being Minister of Sports is to deal with various. I mean, that's it. You know, you're the Minister of Youth and Sports. You're supposed to, because it takes. If I'm looking at it from the athlete's point of view, I've never been an elite athlete or anything, but having dealt with them, moved among them, it takes ages to get to that level of conditioning, and then to qualify for a world championship and to be thrown out by, at the end of the day, was politics. Politics, which at the end of the day, and I'm happy you yourself said that, canceling what happened in Benin was set off a chain of unintended consequences. So I think there's fault on every side, really. You know, we can sit here, I mean, and you can absolve yourself of any blame, but at the end of the day,
no, I'm not trying to absolve myself. What I've done is to present the facts out there. Responsibility goes everywhere. You know, where can you go as a minister if the stakeholders in a particular sport do not work with you? I'm not going to go out there with my staff in the ministry to play the game of basketball. Don't also forget, we invested so much money. I was on the approved money that got them to qualify. So it was also a painful decision. You see, I apart from what goes out there, I deal with the five. I deal with the comments. I deal with the facts. The cold facts are there. And when I see that what we have ahead of us is almost when the players said they will not play, they were clear about it, that they will not play. So who shows up to play for us? So I'm not absolving myself. I'm just saying this is the situation in which we find ourselves. And let me tell you, sometimes some tough decisions have to be taken. As we speak, we have Kenya and other countries who have decided, look, FIFA, go ahead and ban us. We will not have this confusion in our football. And that's the way it's been in sports. Several countries have been banned, even from football and other whatever, because you have difficult situations like this do happen. And the basketball thing, as unfortunate as it was, we were faced with this extremely difficult, and we had to take a tough decision.
All right, I hear you, Mr. Sports Minister. Okay, thank you. That's all from me.
I'd like to ask a question about the Adopt an Athlete plan that was instituted, right? And then we have the Olympics coming up next year. Now I know you may be in office or may not be in office for next term, but what's the plan to continue the Adopt an Athlete, to give the athletes the opportunity to prepare for Olympic games like this?
Thank you very much. If you look at the calendar, the countdown started, and I hope that in another 20 days, I will have been able to do a valedictory to wrap up and move on. The Adopt an Athlete initiative, which was conceived November 2019, was with the sole aim of providing support for athletes. I had found out that most of our athletes, apart from the elite athletes, most of them actually had to wait for All Africa Games every 2 or 4 years. They had to wait for the Commonwealth every 4 years, or the Olympics or the National Sports Festival before they can make money. So they struggle. They spend more time working odd jobs and lesser time training. They can pay coaches. So we said, look, let's take a stab at this. And the idea was that we decided to create a special profile for each of our athletes, about 70 of them, showing their exploits, over time, what the laurels they've won and the rest. Very colorful pitch document. And when we launched it, right there we had about 5-7 companies really decide to $10,000 to go directly to home-based athletes, $20,000 to go directly to foreign-based athletes. Several of our top flight athletes were adopted. Now, that took off very well. And then COVID-19 came. And when it came, almost 6 of those that had agreed to sponsor actually backed out. So we had to restart the campaign from the scratch. But ultimately, at the end, we had about 48 of our athletes. Tobia Musa, Issei Brume, Odunayo, Adegoroye, Blessing, and a couple of them. Even the basketball teams also got money eventually. And that money went directly to them. No proxies. It's paid into your account directly. The money was meant simply to help them pay their coaches, nutritionists, their health. So that happened. Now, we also built in a sustainable model. We tied it to preparations to the Olympics and the international competitions. Our focus was support towards the Olympics and support towards the Commonwealth. Now, the sustainable model is that every time we're on our path to the Olympics or the Commonwealth, this adopt an athlete will come up again. As we speak, we are already preparing the profiles of our athletes that will go to the Olympics. Of course, from what we have on our data, and we know that about 70% of the athletes that are likely to go through the qualifiers and qualify for the Olympics. And then the team at the ministry that has been constituted will go out there, meet private organizations, subnational government and governors to see how they can be able to support, just like we did before. And we think that with the string of successes, particularly that of the World Athletics in Oregon and the Commonwealth, I think more people are now aware, and we expect that we will get more favorable response to support our athletes with $10,000 on base and $20,000 foreign base. So whether I'm in office or out of office as I go, that model is on ground. It's been imbibed as part of our sports support culture at the ministry, and I'm sure that will continue, and our athletes can get the support that is needed.
All right, Minister, let me just say on record that I do support your desire or your decision, to stop the athletes that's talking about basketball to represent the country based on what was making the rounds at the time. Because I do remember in Tokyo where 10 of our 18 athletes were declared ineligible to compete. And as a result, carried placards in Tokyo, and in my estimation, an embarrassment to the country. But to forestall that sort of situation, what are we doing about getting a doping center in the country for testing athletes out of competition?
Well, thank you for that question. What are we doing? When we came back from Tokyo, after that unfortunate incident, we had a congressional hearing at the National Assembly. We had a committee do a report to find out what happened, who slept at the switch. We had certain decisions taken, and we also had timelines to effect certain changes. Part of what we did was that we increased our testing by 120%. So we went from testing of about 25 to almost 89. And after 1 year, we had a letter from the integrity unit of the World Athletics commending the ministry and the Nigerian government responding very quickly to the doping, the testing that are necessary by the increased number and consistency of our testing. We also dealt with some of the problems we had. There's a whereabouts form where athletes must always impute their whereabouts. It's only an athlete that can do it, and it's based on that whereabouts form that they can be tracked for testing. A number of times, athletes do not provide the latest information about their whereabouts. When you're doing testing, sometimes they're not supposed to know that you're coming for testing. So it is the whereabouts that helped. We saw that there was a bit of an inconsistency in the currency of that information. And we'll find a way to correct it by providing awareness and letting athletes know that if you're going to represent Nigeria, you must provide your whereabouts because this test must take place over time. Now, beyond that, we've been able to secure the Insukan, the university in Insukan, because we went ahead to check 3 universities that have established a doping center, but not fully equipped. We went to the University of Ibadan, we went to Insuka, we went to University of Lagos. Eventually, the report came back and said Insuka has, what it takes for that takeoff. And we got that into the budget. In the 2022 budget, we have about 200 million to commence that process. The process of establishing that doping center, because what we do now is we take all our tests to South Africa, or sometimes we do our tests from here and send to South Africa, actually. And it takes time, it costs a lot. Now, the work has started, at the doping center in Suka. We're working with WADA. WADA has agreed to supervise the process. What we are looking at is not a question of brick and mortar. It's a question of the digital approved international equipment for testing that will meet the WADA, World Anti-Doping Agency standards. So that project is ongoing. It's going to take maybe another year. Then we have to go through the process of certification and all of that. But we're keeping a tab on making sure that the frequency and the number of our tests is very high and is critical. And we know that WADA from South Africa, where the One for Africa region has been working with us consistently on corrective measures and also the programs that we have.
Okay, we can't do this without talking about football. Hosting of the Africa Cup of Nations for 2025, we're hoping to do so alongside Benin Republic. When we put out the story here, a lot of people were critical of Nigeria's desire to host the Africa Cup of Nations, stating our lack of infrastructure, the insecurity in the country, and so many other reasons. So on what premise really are we looking at hosting the Africa Cup of Nations? And how successful can we be, as far as the bid is concerned?
Oh, good. Let me stay first on security. Off my finger, I can reel off several African countries, or even outside, that have security challenges. The dimension of those challenges are just different. If I stretch it as far as America, you look at the number of people that are killed, and people will want to dismiss it to say it's not kidnapping, but people are killed every day, and the government responds to it. You come to Africa, there's insecurity in almost all this. We tend to over-amplify our own. That's one. Two, we've had athletes come here severally in the last several years for competitions. They come and go. We don't hear stories that they were killed. Yes, there are security challenges, but also the government moves to provide security when you're hosting such international events. You raise the level of security around those venues and around those cities. You set up a new security regime or architecture around it. There are detailed security features that you must meet by FIFA. By the same token, when it comes to the facility, there's a timeline. They give you 2-3 years. They come and do an audit. Just 3 weeks ago, FIFA was here to do an audit of our sporting infrastructure. They were in Abuja, Moshood. They were in Uyo. They were in Lagos, Teslim Balogu, and all of that. The report of that will guide us to say, because the report will look at security, we look at infrastructure, we look at hotels and tourism, we look at transportation. So it's a complete report. Now, that report is being awaited. That report, to a very large extent, will guide us going forward, because we will have to respond as a government to say, do we have the resources? Do we have the capacity? Do we have the time on our hands to be able to fulfill all of this? Because FIFA and CAF will not waive their requirements or lower their standard. I know that very clearly. Now, if we're able to have that engagement, and it is clear that we can do it, it is now left for us at the level of political will to muzzle the resources necessary. The government of Nigeria has provided the guarantee that is needed, government guarantee, which is critical. We've been able to provide it. About 7 ministries and ministers who are connected, from Internal Affairs Minister, Digital Economy, have also written to say, yes, we're in full support of this, and our ministries to provide what is necessary. But of course, the big elephant is the resources, the funding that we need. So if we're able to convince FIFA that we can do it, that's fine. But if FIFA is unconvinced that we cannot do it, then Nigeria is ready to bid for the 2027. There's the 2027, but ours is 2025. And if realistically, until I see the report from the FIFA team, because I'm also a realist, when we see the report, we engage. If we see that as a government, and between NFF and the ministry, we see the core fact that we cannot make 2025, we will be bold enough to take that decision and then start our bid for 2027.
But why are we looking to do it alongside Benin Republic, but what we're going to ask you to do, because we need to take a short break, about 4 minutes or thereabouts. So we are going to ask you to either hold on or we can call you back in 4 minutes. But we need to conclude on these matters after the break. All right, welcome back. You are listening to Sports Zone live on Lagos Talks 91.3, and we do have the Honorable Minister of Sports with us. He's been with us since the beginning of the show at 8 o'clock. If you've missed it, well, there'll be a rerun much later, a recorded version. Honorable Minister, before the break, I was talking about hosting the Africa Cup of Nations alongside Benin Republic. Why was that decision taken? Why can't we do it alone?
Well, I think ordinarily it was Benin. CAF had given the rights to Benin. And realizing that Benin might not be able to host it, the conversation around having both countries hosted. Don't forget that this is not the first time we're having such a co-hosting. And both the Minister of Sports, my counterpart in the Benin Republic, working with the CAF president and Amaju Pinnick, the former president of NFF, had the conversation around it, and both governments and CAF were okay with the idea of Benin and Nigeria hosting the Cup of Nations.
All right, still talking football matters. We're going to go back in time just a little bit to the days of Gunnar Raw as manager of the Super Eagles. And it's reported that you didn't have such a cordial relationship with the former manager of the Super Eagles. At some point, reported by one of the national dailies that you asked him to, shut up and do his job. The story really is that you engineered the exit of Gunnar Raw as manager of the Super Eagles.
Yeah, thank you. That erroneously has been the story that out there, and it's good to have an opportunity to set the record straight. You'll recall that Gunnar Raw was already in place before I became minister, and at the point of the renewal of his contract, I had several engagements as a minister and as a ministry with the NFF, with looking at the review of his performance. Before a contract renewal is done, there must be an evaluation and a review, and the NFF has that internal process. And I recall that even at the point when I started Benin with the Gomodia Stadium, and we saw the team go from 4-0 leading, and then the other team came from the back to equalize the game. A few things came to my mind, and even the NFF started to really interrogate what was happening. But then, at the point of renewal, I did tell the NFF, and we had that conversation, that they should look at it critically. Are we going to go forward? Because the performance of the technical advisor meet the standard that was set for him. And they looked at his contract and they said, well, it's important we continue with him. Even at that point, I felt that we needed to bring him on. Because we're dealing with data. You look at the team, you look at the technical data, you look at the games they played, the ones they won, you look at whether they are really posted. And for me at that point, I was not really certain. Actually, it's nothing personal. I deal with facts. I deal with reality. It's nothing personal. I know that this is a national team, but you look at the EPL and the other La Liga and the rest, you see what happens. Coaches are judged based on performance. And it's a flip. Coaches can get sacked today after 4 months and after 5 months. There's no sentiment about it. Why should the standard be different when it comes to the Super Eagles of Nigeria? But of course, eventually, the NFL, who are administrators of our sport, had superior arguments for him to continue. and we did allow him to continue. Now, the question is, did we notice an improvement or did we notice a deterioration? I remember several engagements. Maybe other sports ministers have done it, but I'm not one to just wake up and break down and say, fire him. We did ask NFF, and on their own, there was a technical report. Then I asked for an evaluation of Roy's performance. Let's put it on the scale. And that report is there. When put on the scale, it was clear that we have not enjoyed the kind. It's not about winning games. It's also about seeing the technical, the cohesiveness of the team, the technical depth of the team, and the rest. That report is there. More than one report that shows clearly that Raw had not given us the kind of team we wanted. The playing pattern, the technical depth, and to boot the victories that we needed. And I did remember writing Mr. President, to say we're at the point in which we must take a tough decision, whether we let this man go or he stays. And I did reference the reports who were properly guided from the NFF themselves saying, no, this is his performance. People didn't say, fine, but it showed the deterioration, a clear deterioration. These documents exist. They do exist. So we took a decision. I was guided by that to say, listen, this is what we're faced with. Are we going to ignore the fact, pass over it, and just let this continue? Or are we going to take that decision? We also had NFF had engagements with the coach himself. So it was not a personal thing between myself and Ra. No, it was more of a nationalistic thing. I was dealing with facts, and we're dealing with the situation. Now take that to boot. You do a context. You look at the context. Within those 4 months, because the team was not performing well, the overall sentiment from columnists, from sports editors, from sports writers is, get Ra out now. And they were writing why he must go. Consistently. I did a content analysis of about 4 months prior to our disengagement of Ra. And the content analysis shows almost 80% sentiment from sports writers, sports experts, sports editors, sports commentators saying, what are you waiting for? Get him out the door. And they were given the reason. So when you look at the bulk of that, then you also look at the report of the technical report of the analysis of his performance, which was not up to par. We had to take a decision. Again, you see, when it comes to leadership, you must take a decision. It's not every time that decision you take will give you immediate results. But you have to do something. So the decision to let Roy go was a collective decision. It was collective. It was not done unilaterally because a process was there and there's clear evidence of meeting, of documentation, of reports, and we came to a judgment to say, this is what we're going to do. And I did write Mr. President say, we're at this point, these are the facts, these are the facts, these are the facts, and these are our options. And then we took that decision.
Honorable Minister, I must admit, I have differed with you on quite a few things along the line, but this your take on Raw, I support and supported 100%. I was one of those that felt Raw should have been sacked right after the World Cup. In fact, in 2018, I think that's even before he took office. I think he should have gone. I think he should have gone then. I wanted him sacked after we fluffed. All we needed was a draw against Argentina in St. Petersburg. I could achieve that. So that I agree with you 100%. The area that my major bone of contention with you, to be honest with you, is that issue of the basketballers. And Charles brought up something about in Tokyo, some athletes protested. So the question I want to ask you, correct me if I'm wrong, but we do live in a democracy, do we not? So if people are not happy with something, people have the right, do they not, to make their unhappiness known? We don't live in a dictatorship where everybody must face the same direction. You get that's where I see it. So it's unfortunate because we've had some messages that say, with all due respect to you, it's what you tell us that we hear, that the athletes were planning this, planning that. We really don't know. You get what has happened, but I've always said, and I've said it behind you, I'll say to your hearing that I feel you're on the wrong side of history as far as the basketballers were concerned. You understand, Nigerian basketballers. But what is done is done. But funny enough, on another thing, I support you 100% on the decision with Raw. Anybody that is crying about Raw to me, just whether we qualify for World Cup or not, Raw should have been gone a long time ago. So, but hold on, I think we're going to have to round up now. Hold on 1 second, please.
All right, Minister, we're fast running out of time. There's so many issues that we want to deal with. But still talking football, we do have a new manager in Jose Posero. And I want to know whether, because you've talked a lot about funding. Funding seems to be a major problem with sports in this country. The salaries of Posero, where is it coming from? Is it from the Football Federation or is it from your table, the Sports Ministry?
Well, part of the fallout of our non-qualification for the World Cup was that we also saw that that was the issue of delay in salary payment of our technical advisor. The NFF had done well to secure ITO to be paying, but of course you know that oftentimes the payments are delayed, which is a function of when ITO is able to get the money to NFF and NFF can pay. So the ministry took a review to say, we have decided to rebuild football, rebuild our national team. And part of that rebuild has to include the welfare and salaries of not just the players, but also the coach. And what the ministry decided was to write the Nigerian government to say, because we want to make sure that we pick the best coach for the Super Eagles, we want to also make sure that we have the consistency in the payment of the salary. And following the precedent laid by Jonathan, President Goodluck Jonathan, because when we had the same problem about delays of salary payments, President Jonathan actually directed that henceforth the presidency would be paying directly the salary of the coach. And that kind of solved the problem. So we made that suggestion to say, Mr. President, please approve that the ministry should start paying the salary of the coach through an authorization that will go to the central bank with a standing order. Once we have the details and information from the NFF, that will go to CBN. So there's a standing order, there will be a standing order that will pay the coach. Of course, this coach came on, and I did convey that information to NFF. Don't also forget, in between that period that he came on, we had the NFF elections, we had the leadership, the new leadership come on board. But to move that forward, we needed to get information about the banking information of the coach. And based on that banking information, we will write the president to direct the CBN to start paying. So that process is still ongoing. Delayed for a bit. In between that delay, the NFF has been able to pay the salaries for a few months. I don't know the number of months, but I know that we have been communicated with early this week about the amount of months that have been paid and what is existing. Once we're able to get the information that is required logged into the central bank system with an approval of a standing order by Mr. President, which will not even take more than a few days, the payment of the salary of the coach will come directly from the Nigerian government because it's a fixed salary through the instruction that will be given to the CBN. And that's where we are on this.
Okay, based on the lack of funds, would you, in your experience as sports minister, be advocating for autonomy of the various sporting federations?
This is the hard and the bitter truth. The moment the government pulls out from the sports federation, 98% of them would be land. That is because the board of this federation have not developed a model of private partnership. They don't have a successful model of finding sponsorship from the private sector. So if that is done suddenly, 95% of them will not breathe. It's like taking the oxygen away. What we had envisaged was a process, a phased-out process. And with the sports industry policy that was approved on November 2nd, that turned sports into business, we are almost at that doorstep. As we speak now, it's not just that sports is a business, but basketball is a business, football is a business, tennis is a business. What it means, therefore, is that the government will provide the incentives necessary for the private sector. These federations can take this incentive package and pitch it with the sponsors to say, if you give us 1 million naira, you're going to get 35% tax rebate. The technical committee working, the incentives have been approved. It's just the granular details about the time and the duration that's been worked on. By the end of this week, the technical report with the specifics. So you are importing sporting equipment, you get complete waiver from customs. All of those will be ready at the end. Those bouquet of incentives will serve as trigger to open the pulses of the private sector. At that point, government can now start to phase out because.
Oops.
Wow. I think
that was
very specific, very detailed.
the disconnection of
No, the interview.
the interview. Oh yeah, it was. Cardi, as a matter of fact, Cardi has been.
All right.
Can I continue?
Yes, sometimes these networks can be dodgy.
Well, your credit.
Yeah, so at that point, once this bouquets they've been approved, it's just the details of it. Now, every sports federation can now go, because the point is that a sponsor also needs something back. And they can see that, if we invest this amount of money, that's what obtains in other clients where sports is business. That we're going to get this rebate back, tax holiday. Is a detailed whatever. I think that will help. But let me also say this. The funding of sports right now is at the level of between 25 and 35, or let me say 25 and 38% from government. So when you also look at it, about 30% of the funding also comes from the boards and the private sector, not through the very official private sector, but through who the president knows, who some board members know that can make donations in kit, in funding, etc. Now, we believe that the sports industry policy, sports as business policy with the incentives will go a long way to boost private sector investment in our sports development.
Okay.
But government has committed funds in that direction. Let me say something, for instance. I'm preparing my notes, and I've been able to garner, because I'm doing that for every federation. The Nigerian Football Federation, in 8 years, under President Muhammadu Buhari, has received in excess of 17 billion naira.
Wow.
And this is appropriated and budgeted money, and also special presidential intervention funds. And I can say that for the amount basketball has received. The amount. So I'm being deliberate in that computation. So when people say government is not funding sport, it is wrong. What you need to say is that government is not funding sports to the level it should. So you have about 40% to 50% funding of sports by government. Then you can argue to say government needs to up it to 75%. But now that is a policy funded by government, then we know that it's going to be public-private partnership. But government is funding sports, but it's not up to the level. So to say government is not funding sports, that computation, when it's ready, will make it available to the media. Then you will see in 8 years, the money that has gone to football, the money that has gone to basketball, the money that has gone to table tennis, to wrestling, and people can make their judgment.
All right, thank you so much for talking to us, Honorable Sports Minister. And congratulations on your award as the best minister in the country. I mean, well deserved.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
And the award from
Thank you for
Maldives
this
as well.
opportunity.
Yeah, and the award from Maldives as well. You're recognized internationally.
Yep.
What's the most difficult thing about being a sport minister?
Oh my, tough question. Yeah, but I'll attempt to.
Can you do that in 1 minute? Because we do have to go.
I'll do it in 1 minute. First, one of the most, I won't say difficult, but one of the most sensitive audiences anyone has to manage is the sports audience of any country.
True that.
The sports audience in this country is over 1 100 million. They love their sports. They love the victories. They love the challenges. So, when things don't go as expected, there's always a backlash. But very often, I think the most difficult is that the level of understanding of sports as an industry or a sector is not to the level that you expect. So when things happen, when decisions are taken, people do not understand what really goes into that process. So what I had to do with each time is that how will certain decisions that we make be perceived? Will people really understand? Will people agree with the reasons and the rationale behind these decisions? As we speak, the NFL will have to take a decision on whether Risaro's contract will go forward or will be terminated. Now, a lot of things will go into that. Whether it goes forward or is terminated, the NFL will receive dagger for the Ministry of Youth and Sports. Not many people will understand. So, in sports, I realized there are a lot of difficult decisions. Then there's a clash between sentiment, reality, and what needs to be done. But often I've learned from the very difficult road that sometimes you have to travel, take the road less traveled to get to where you want to get to.
All right, thank you so much, Honorable Sports Minister, Chief Sunday Dare, for talking to us on Sports Zone. It's been worth the wait, to be honest.
3-year wait.
Thank you so much for having me and for your very frank questions and comments.
Yeah. Charles, before the minister goes, I just need to let him know that, Honorable Minister, my name is Olu Akaide. I'm the producer of this Belt and also a part of the team. And I really, after this interview, I understood what you go through when you put in so much and you're not recognized. I wasn't introduced when others were being
So is that your problem?
So I just want to say I feel the pains of the minister doing so much and not being recognized. But before you go, just one quick question. You've served, this is your first time of serving as a minister of sports, and you've made mistakes, of course, and you've learned a lot. Which, if you were to serve in this role again, what would you do differently? Or what would you advise the incoming sports minister to do? You can do that in 1 minute.
Your question, if I understand, is that what will I do differently?
Yes, if you were to have this opportunity.
And your advice for the incoming sport minister.
Okay. Well, very tough questions. What will I do differently? One, what I would do differently is to find a way to engage more directly with the athlete. To make sure that from even the very ordinary decisions, that beyond listening to the president and the board, we create a robust listening post for the athlete. But also to make sure that that listening post and that channel is not corrupted by people that have contrary interest. Because oftentimes when I have engaged directly with the athlete, I am shocked about the fact that, and I say, well, why did you have to go internationally and make your case when you have access? Have you written? Have you called? Have you sought an audience and you didn't get it? And they say, well, they think the only way they can be had is going out there. So that is something I would do differently.
All right.
That is an engagement without trying to undermine the leadership of the board, because I can always listen to the athletes and call the board to say, listen, without mentioning names. These are the things I found out. We need to fix them. That's one. Two, I also realize that oftentimes certain decisions that are delayed for too long, we miss the goal. So once you have all the facts, and you're sure, you need to just take that decision and then make sure that before you take it, you prepare for whatever needs to be done.
Okay, Sport Minister, we do have to go. We've overrun our time. We have overrun our time, and we're begging the next program. Really, we're really delighted to have had you talk to us on Sports Zone.
Thank you.
We wish you the best. We wish you the best. Thank you so much.